If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I'm back with another album review for you guys. And today I am talking about one of the big ones for the month of February that I wanted to cover, and that is, of course, the latest studio offering from probably the best Finnish melodic death metal band going currently, and that is Insomnium with ANNO 1696. So yeah, Insomnium, I've become quite a fan of these guys after I first heard the song While We Sleep, and I just loved how beautiful, yet the heaviness of that song, but the great melodic parts on there. I was like, you know, this band has something. And then, of course, I checked out their last two albums, and I believe I reviewed both of them, and they were Winter's Gate and Hard Like a Grave. Both were fucking amazing albums. Winter's Gate, if I remember right, that was either a top 5 or a top 10 album of the year for me in 2016. And I'm fairly certain Insomnium was like close to the top 10. But here we are with a new album, ANNO 1696. And, well, I didn't listen to any of the singles that came out because I was basically like, you know what? Why don't I wait until the album comes out and just listen to it all? Because that's the beauty of Insomnium. It's like you have to listen to the whole thing at once to get the full picture of it. And right out of the gate with the first track, 1696, and this does kind of start a bit of a theme, at least for the first few tracks on the album. You get these like cool build-ups in the first half of the album for the most part, beginning with 1696, basically like a half a title track, and it's mostly acoustic with some cool percussion, though I will say these acoustic parts and the percussion that's going on in the build-up here kind of reminds me a little bit of Nile. Like, it almost has a little bit of a Middle Eastern flair to it, but it was still pretty cool to hear. But then suddenly you get an epic payoff with a big burst of blast beats and tremolos that are done in like almost a black metal sense. Well, they're black metal-esque, but done in Insomnium's melodic death metal style. And then the following track, White Christ, which was one of the big singles, and this track featuring Sakis Tolis from Rotting Christ, which I would love to hear a new Rotting Christ album this year, because the last two from them has been great too. But yeah, this song kind of has a lot of different twists and turns going on here. Like, it begins with this like almost 80s inspired gothic rock clean guitar. Like, I almost thought of maybe like Sisters of Mercy or something like that when I heard this clean guitar. But then it follows a doom groove, and the way the groove is going, as well as some of the riffing parts, almost made me think of the song Nameless Elite by Asphyx off of their last album, The Crossers. Like, it has the same beat, and some of the riffs kind of made me think of that song, although here it's a little more epic, more somber, and more melodic than Nameless Elite. And the fucking vocals from Sakis is fucking brilliant on here. Then again, he's a hell of a vocalist, even though I don't really consider him a black metal vocalist like a lot of people do. I think of him as being closer to death metal, to me at least. But yeah, I really liked how there was just a lot of different elements going on here, but I liked that doom groove that this track was able to provide. Almost kind of about as close to a doom song you get on this album for the most part in terms of like the majority of it. And then we get to God Forsaken, which features Johanna Kirkella, who I believe is the wife of the keyboardist of Nightwish, I believe. But right away, you get these beautiful wailing vocals from Johanna on God Forsaken. And then after those wailing vocals, you get like all sorts of different things again going on here. Grooves, blast beats, and even some like 80s inspired guitar progressions that are happening on here. Although the vibe on not only this song, but on quite a few moments on this album made me think of bands like Necrophobic, because whenever Insomnium, especially on this album, gets down into like tremolo riffs and blast beats on top of that, it almost makes me think of a band like Necrophobic, because Necrophobic has always been a great example of like taking blackened tremolos but making it sound great in like a melodic death metal context, and that's kind of what Insomnium is doing on a lot of parts on this album, is providing those like blackened tremolos and blasts, but keep it melodic death metal oriented. But also, like, pretty much this whole album has, for the most part, like half of the tracks have some beautiful acoustic guitars that are very folky and at times very proggy. And we'll talk about one of those moments later on, but also it does get a little bit doomy on Godforsaken, just a little bit, to kind of feel like a bit of a carryover from White Christ. But yeah, definitely the first 3 tracks was mostly about building tension and atmosphere before you get those big payoff moments. But then you get to the final track of the first album, Lillian, starting off with some more beautiful acoustic work, although this time it kind of reminded me a little bit of like recent Opeth a little bit, and then it gets into like almost like a hardcore groove, and then it gets a little bit thrashy, kind of like, say, Dark Tranquility or Omnium Gatherum a little bit whenever they get into like a thrash beat, but done in Insomnium's signature style. And up to this point, probably the most energetic track of the album is, I think this was one of the shorter ones at 4.5 minutes, because a lot of these songs are quite long, between like 6 and 8 minutes. Like Godforsaken was actually 8.5, and then it goes into Lillian being 4.5. But yeah, Lillian, I thought it changed things up. It was a little more energetic and just filled with some really cool riffage. But the second half, I will definitely agree with most reviewers that the second half is really where the album picks up in a big way. Like Starless Paths, right away, somber melodic leads that are harmonized. Then again, you got 3 guitarists in Insomnium, so you got 2 of them doing harmonies while one of them still carrying on the rhythm. But these harmonized leads or melodies definitely feel very power metal inspired. Then again, like Finnish melodic death metal has always had an element of power metal to their melodies. You know, Kalma and Children of Bodom especially. But again, gets into those blackened tremolos, some double bass, but it's all done in like, and there's some like really cool triplet patterns going on here that definitely keep that like death metal element going forward. But man, this song, as well as a lot of moments on this album, you get these like big, epic, heroic moments that are just wow. Like they could have felt like they could have been in like a movie soundtrack or something. And even a cool shredding lead. Like most of the leads on this album are mostly about the melody and tension building, or just being all about being beautiful and atmospheric. But this lead in Starless Paths gets a little bit shreddy, which is really cool. The Witch Hunter, this is a curious one, because there was a lot of moments on here that made me think of the song Sacred Serenity by Death, like the beat and some of the riff work, but again, more melodic inspired. But yeah, I just liked how it just made me think of that track, because then again, Symbolic, in my opinion, the best Death album, so why not take cues from that? Then The Unrest, the shortest song of the album at under 4 minutes, is largely like a folky prog rock epic, a little bit, just all acoustic, atmosphere, and clean vocals. But then you get to the finale, The Rapids, and again, this song I think is a perfect encapsulation of everything that this album was able to do. It starts off with some beautiful piano, and then some beautiful melodic tremolos on top of blasts, and then it gets into like straightforward thrashy melodeath, very much At the Gates inspired. Like I almost immediately thought of At the Gates whenever the speed picked up. But just the riff work and the atmospherics you get on this track, top to bottom, fucking impeccable. So yeah, like I said, first half was mostly about, like, the openings of those first half tracks was all about building tension, but man, do you get great payoffs to them. The second half is where they were just more or less like, hey, let's just get straight to the point and just go for it all. Like I said, beautiful acoustic work, tasty and sweet leads, mostly about atmosphere and melody. And yeah, there are moments on here that are like power metal, black metal, doom metal, prog, and thrash, kind of here and there. But the melodies is definitely the big focal point of the album. It's not so much about how heavy we can be, but when it does get heavy, it gets heavy. But it's the melodies that is kind of like the draw for me when it comes to Insomnium. The production, now this is really kind of one of the couple of complaints I have. Like the first half, I love the tension building moments in the beginnings of some of the songs on the first half. But on 1696, the opening track, could have probably trimmed the fat down on it a little bit. But yeah, that was a slight complaint. And then the other complaint, when it came down to the mix, like the production's solid, but when it came down to the mix, I do wish the guitars could have been a little bit more upfront. But the vocals, damn good roars, some tasteful cleans. I love the vocal performance on this album for damn sure. Now, as far as an overall score, I think it's a great album. However, I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a great album, definitely highly recommend for fans of Insomnium such as I, as after all, Insomnium as well as a couple other melodeath bands like Hypocrisy and At the Gates, they have 3 different takes of melodeath, but they're the 3 takes that I prefer. Hypocrisy, whenever it's a little more brutal, but they balance it out with the melody. At the Gates with the more proggy, thrashy approach. And then here with Insomnium, the more proggy, doomy, somber approach. Like, these are the types of melodeath I like to listen to. Not so much the other kinds of melodeath that's out there. But yeah, 8.5 out of 10, definitely a great one. I don't think it's as strong as the previous 3 albums, but it's still great. After all, this is a band that I don't believe has a bad album. But I digress. And of course, that's my opinion. What did you guys think of ANNO 1696 by Insomnium? Let me know in the comments section below. And until next time, you keep your horns high and your dreams wet.